Aloha everyone. So in this lecture, we are going to talk about a very important neurotransmitter called serotonin, and it's very important, especially in the fields of behavioral science and psychiatry. All right, so these are overview of neurotransmitters, and serotonin is one of the falls in the category of biogenic amines. Now, what is serotonin? So we're seeing the chemical structure of serotonin, and if you're taking my course, I don't expect you to memorize this structure, but this is what it is. So it's also called 5-hydroxytryptamine. So unless you've taken an organic chemistry or biochemistry class, that probably doesn't make much sense. But I'm bringing this up because this is another name for serotonin. And it's also sometimes called 5-HT. When it's called 5-HT, it's referring to this very long organic name right here. Now, I bring up 5-HT because serotonin targets serotonin receptors, also called 5-HT receptors. Now, how is serotonin? So you release serotonin in the synapse and activate serotonin receptors. Then how do you turn it off? Well, a big way that's turned off is by reuptake back into the presynaptic neuron or degradation. But reuptake is a very important way of turning off serotonin. And what does it do? Well, it affects many things, and some of its main functions in the nervous system and in our bodies is affecting our mood and how we feel, and also our appetite. So there's also a lot of serotonin receptors in your gastrointestinal system, your digestive system, and also in the parts that control your appetite and whether like your overall digestive activity, and also affects your sleep. So problems with serotonin can also cause sleep disorders. So in general, serotonin, if we just took a whole big picture, serotonin is generally inhibitory, and except there are some exceptions where it could be stimulatory, but in this case, it's just generally. Now, fluoxetine, or trade name Prozac, is that a common thing that affects serotonin. Now, it itself is not serotonin, but affects it. So what does it do? It prolongs, so it makes the effects of serotonin last longer in synapses, so that, yeah, more serotonin activity compared to without this drug. Now, what is it used for? It's used for a lot of psychiatric disorder, and it was used for, and is still used for major depressive disorder, even though recent data in 2023 says that maybe it's not as effective. But still, even if it's not effective for depression, it's also effective for other psychiatric disorders such as anxiety, post-traumatic stress disorder, eating disorders, obsessive compulsive disorders. So there's, even if it's not from, because a major thing behind major depressive disorder, they thought it was due to a lack of serotonin was a major cause. And they looked at like all the people who have been prescribed, and or I shouldn't say all, but they tried to do pretty much like almost all the papers that or let's just think what's being published about serotonin and the data, and they compared the numbers. They say maybe serotonin, or like this isn't as, now only for depression. They say like it might not be as effective for depression, and that's why some people have mixed results. But back to fluoxetine. So fluoxetine is what is called a selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor, so or SSRI. So what is an SSRI? Well, there's more than fluoxetine, but what they do is like they selective, so it means that they're going to affect serotonin. But reuptake is that major way of removing serotonin from a synapse and turning those serotonin signals off. But what this is going to do is inhibit reuptake. So it's going to turn off the turn off signal. So that, then there's many other ones. We're seeing other types of serotonin reuptake inhibitors, not just fluoxetine and Prozac, but here we have sertraline and Zoloft. These all kind of work in the general way. Okay, so presynaptic cell, and here we have all these vesicles. So we're showing it at rest. All the serotonin is here in the vesicles, so it's not synapse yet. But say that presynaptic cell that would release serotonin, you have action potentials. It reaches here at the axon terminal and open up the ion channels. And then the open calcium ion channels, when the calcium floods in the axon terminal, it causes the vesicles to contain serotonin to emerge at the synaptic cleft, releasing serotonin into the synapse. And serotonin can bind to its receptors, open up ion channels, and cause action potentials in the postsynaptic cell that responds to serotonin. So that is kind of like serotonin signaling. Now, serotonin reuptake, what happens? Well, say you don't need the serotonin anymore, or your cells, it's like, hey, we're done with that serotonin signal, let's turn it off. So this is a major way of eliminating serotonin from the synapse, is just hoovering it back up into the presynaptic cell, and it repackages it back into vesicles so it can be reused another time. So this is what we saw, is that we went from all the serotonin in the synapse, you had the reuptake, package it back up into vesicles in the presynaptic cell, and we're removing serotonin from the synapse. So serotonin turns off, these ion channels are now closed, so the postsynaptic cell isn't responding to serotonin anymore. Now, with this, let's reset. Okay, so say there's low amounts of serotonin. What can we do? Like, say we want serotonin to happen in this synapse, but we don't have it. So what can happen is you can introduce a SSRI. So a SSRI is going to plug up the serotonin reuptake inhibitor. So again, this is not serotonin. These SSRIs aren't serotonin themselves. They're actually targeting these reuptake transporters. So by blocking these and inhibiting the reuptake transporters, so we're going to have serotonin being released. Say you excite this presynaptic cell, it releases its serotonin and activates the synapse. Well, if you inhibit the reuptake transporters, if, if you have the serotonin here, how are you going to get rid of it? Well, you got a major way of getting rid of serotonin. So with these serotonin reuptake transporters being blocked, this serotonin stays in the synapse longer, allowing so previously we had very low levels of serotonin in this example, but by inhibiting the reuptake transporters, we keep serotonin in the synapse. So we strengthen the serotonin signal in this synapse that had a weak serotonin signal before. So that's why these SSRIs are very important and very powerful in increasing the amount of serotonin signaling in the brain. Okay, so but the thing is that it also has its side effects. So side effects, but to reiterate, what does serotonin do to the nervous system? It affects, among many things, mood, appetite, and sleep. Now let's pull up an example list of side effects of one of these drugs. And here is a big list of it. So what we see are some things that affect, remember, mood, appetite, and sleep. So what we might see is anxiety. That's that's a change in mood. Sexual dysfunction is also a part that you see with the common side effect with these SSRIs, and changes in weight and appetite. Sometimes people gain weight, and actually that's a frequent side effect of serotonin, is that people gain weight on them. Or anorexia. Some people actually stop wanting to eat, and look, what does serotonin affect? Appetite. And gastrointestinal distress. So some people may have that, is also something affected by appetite. And sleep disturbances. Some people, they may get sleepy, they might sleepier, they might get insomnia, they may have like very vivid dreams. So serotonin already affects that. So sometimes side effects is maybe you kind of overshoot it and you have too much of this effect, and it causes things that could cause negative effects on this. This is also why there's often an adjustment period, because the thing is that, so I mean, it would be very incredibly invasive if they did so, but you can't just go into the brain to like pull out, like put all these like tiny needles in the synapses and measure how much serotonin you have in these synapses. So this is why it's really hard to directly measure serotonin. I mean, they could do it with something like a PET scan, but that's also like something that's pretty involved, not invasive, but it's either really difficult or really invasive to actually measure the amount of serotonin in your, or or really expensive to measure the amount of serotonin in your synapses. So that's why there's often an adjustment period with these drugs for people, not a psychiatrist, but this is often why they have to adjust medications, because it's trying to get that right amount of serotonin in your synapse. So another thing is, like, is it just about chemical imbalances in terms of like psychiatric disorders? And so especially ones like major depressive disorder slash depression. Well, they finding out it may be that study was a landmark study and saying like, hey, it's not due to a lack, may not be due to a lack of serotonin in the brain. And there's like other models say like it might just be more than these neurotransmitters. It could be also things like the psychological health, mental health, and also social health too as well. So, and there's also something called cognitive behavioral therapy, and this isn't a drug. This is a type of talk therapy, And what it does is looks at different ways of thinking. Now, this is not a psychology class, but I thought it was really neat because it's like before I learned about and started like, oh, when I first learned about this, I was like, oh, I didn't realize like, oh, emotions and thoughts are different. And what it does is trying to kind of see how like our initial thoughts affect our emotions, how our behaviors, and kind of like turning the lens in of someone onto their own, kind of seeing their patterns of behaviors, their thoughts and emotions. And the things that the great thing about cognitive behavioral therapy is that they found if you combine this with like like drugs like SSRIs, the combination is often even more powerful together. So it's like it's not just about like drugs and neurotransmitters. Sometimes this is why you want. It's also about like the human experience and social experience as well. So it's not the only type of psychotherapy. There's other types of psychotherapy out there, but this is one of the ones that has a lot of evidence going behind it and support and effectiveness, evidence of effectiveness. All right, and if you're at UH Manoa, then there's something called here, and this is my little plug for here because it's nearing the end of the semester and it's often a stressful time. So this is where you find the Counseling Student Development Center. Is private. I mean, they're professionals, and the cool thing is that if you're at UH Manoa, unless they changed it, you get 6 free sessions. I forgot if it was a year or a semester, but either way, if you try to get any sort of therapy outside of it without insurance, it's going to cost you like, well, I mean, I don't know how much it would cost now, but last time I heard it could cost you like a few hundred or several $100s. So your student fees pay for that, and this is a steal. So if you're feeling that, or sometimes just want to talk, maybe you don't necessarily have be some sort of like behavioral disorder or depression, but say you're just frustrated or just need someone to talk to, they're great for that as well. Okay, so back to the lesson. So what we talked about is serotonin, its various effects, and how this very important category of drugs called SSRIs affect serotonin. And this is very useful when if any of you are going to nursing, medicine, or pharmacology, you'll see these prescribed all the time. So it's very important to learn about that